I'm still in Sydney.
And where are you, James, right now?
I'm in San Francisco,
Okay.
California. But yeah, that behind me.
His name, I don't remember anymore. It's 7. Oh, it's 8 o'clock. So
Next declaration. Everybody seems prophet. No, we have just a moment.
playing Lego.
Yeah.
So the name is Hope of Garden or the Garden of Hope. Which way?
With
Morning.
What about
Good morning.
audio?
Oh, James.
Good morning.
Now, James.
Hello.
Morning, James.
Hi,
Hello.
James.
Nice haircut.
So stylish.
Thank you.
Where are you going?
No, I'm here with the same wine.
Yeah.
It's different haircut.
On this stylish night.
So my mom gave me a haircut for the first time in 30 years. I couldn't go to a barber.
Okay. Could you
Hey,
try?
yeah.
Hey, James. How are you? Greeting. Where are you now?
I'm in the West Coast.
Oh, you're still
Yeah.
in the US.
Still there
Okay.
still in the US. Yeah.
All right.
We can start. Okay. Good morning, everybody. As you know, our official start is the image I have in my background, and usually I use a song to introduce my image. As you know, this is not a topic. This is just what I'm thinking this morning, this week, today. This is my personal present because the mood of this series is to share different point of view, different images, and talk about in a totally free way. Because we thought that this series in a opposite way, not starting from keywords, not starting from topic, but maybe having keywords, having topics as a result of our relationship with our friends. So I'm very glad to have all of you with us. And the image I have in the background is an image from Mantua, from the Cortile della Cavallerizza. I could share my screen with you to make it bigger. This image. And I was very young when I was in this place for my first time. I was approximately 22 years old. I was a student in Milano Polimi University. The faculty was only in Piazza Leonardo da Vinci. And I was in Mantua because I would like to design my thesis project in this place. But at a certain point, I abandoned this idea because this place seems look to my eyes so perfect and so difficult, and I think I thought I was too young for a so difficult challenge. I fall in love with this place just in this point, looking through the windows, looking at the river, and realize also this opposite situation. No, this courtyard is like a room. Have an inside and also it has an exterior. Inside is totally decorated, and from the inside I can see the world around me, the landscape. Today we are talking about rivers, and as you know, the word landscape comes from the Dutch Landschaft, that during the first travels in the sea, the drovers, the mappers, the people involved in geographical discoveries try to draw the silhouette of the seafront, and this kind of drawing was called landscape. This is the landscape. The landscape, as Rosario Assunto, one of the most important Italian philosophers, the first one who wrote about landscape, said the landscape is something across the architecture, something that you can see thanks to architecture, something that you can see like the Alps. He said, like the Alps in a road in Turin. So the river Mincio is this in Mantua. It's something that I can appreciate thanks to this architecture, thanks to Giulio Romano, thanks this imaging unuseful corridor, no? Because talking about functional issues is this corridor is what's not useful, and we as architects we know it. But this simple corridor is an amazing, awesome frame to give to the river best frame of ever. For this reason, the interior is so decorated, and the exterior, as you know, is totally undecorated. But the question is the room. We are in a room. We are currently in a room. As you know, in Milano, we are still blocked. We have to stay in Lombardy, and a different part of Italy is saying no. We don't know. We don't want Milanese as tourists in our beaches because they are infected. So we are really in a prison. But really, in these 2 months, we discovered that our prison is not so bad. My house is not so bad. My life so slow is not so bad. I'm discovering a different kind of life, a different kind of rhythm. I'm discovering how beautiful is Ostium. I was talking about this with Matteo Moscatelli some weeks ago, while we was planning this episode. Otium laziness is useful in this period because is making us more active, no? But now, as you know, we are restart. And this slowness with this velocity is seems in opposition, no? As the river, such a river. Sometimes the river seems stopped like the Mincio in Mantua, like a lake. But sometimes the river is amazing because it's very fast, it's very aggressive. No? For example, in some part of Ticino River in Lombardy, it's possible to go to surf. So the song I choose today is like Wake Up, and I choose for you a singer from this huge Po Valley where Mantua is. And this singer is singing about the faster Mantuan, the faster airplane of ever. This airplane is red, and this crooner is Paolo Conte, and I choose this song because I suppose it's really, for me, it's really useful to find my rhythm in the morning. This song is talking about this airplane, is planning over the Europe searching enemies. This is the war, but there is something of romantic in this kind of war, no? Some epic, heroic, like this battle we are doing in this period. This is the song.
Quelle bambine bionde, con quegli anellini alle orecchie, tutte spose che partoriranno uomini grossi come altri. E quando cercherai di convincerli, allora lo vedi che sono forti di legno. Ah, diavolo rosso, dimentica la strada. Vieni qui con noi a bere un'aranciata, con voluti tutto il tempo sulla.
So this is all. I would share with you this my thinking about this my thoughts about this opposition, no? Interior, exterior, fast, slow. Our life in this way is in the middle of this, and we have to find a new balance to restart. Absolutely. So now I would like to introduce all of you one each other. So I'm very glad to have with us Mr. Liu Yang. I met him for the first time in Mantua during this important festival of architecture we have in Mantua every year. Matteo Moscatelli from Mantova Faculty of Architecture from Polimi is here to introduce better than me Mr. Liu Yang, but also to talk about his activity in urban public space in Italy, and last but not least to show us this year Mantova Festival of Architecture. And also we have with us amazing and my beloved friend Luisa Ferro. She came from Milano. We worked together a lot of years ago when I was a lecturer in Faculty of the Architecture, Civil Architecture in Bovisa in Milano. Currently, she is adjunct professor in Facoltà di Architettura, Ambiente e Società in Polimi, Milano, and she worked in Mantova, and later she'll show you some image, some interesting image, because with Michael and some other friends from Architecture Design Group, we was into Luisa Ferro building in Mantova, a small cozy and lovely pavilion in the most important square in Mantua. Also, we have with us my favorite Chinese in the world, Emily Zhu from Alvar Aalto University. She is my assistant in relationship with the Chinese world. She's my cultural assistant, and also she's one of my best friends, and we have a great feeling. So it's the best person, the best people able to show me the secret of Chinese culture. Except about woman, rock, dinner, real male life. Because for this I have James. I have James Kiwi, and about surf, wildlife, landscape. Because for this I have Michael Erickson. That now is driving, so you have to look the road. And also we have with us one of my best Milanese friend, Claudio Nelli, involved in communication of architecture in Milano. Is the founder, the co-founder of one, maybe the most important website in town, where every project, every news about architecture and urbanism in town are shown. So this is all. What I forgot something?
Oh, just you didn't say the name of the place, but
Sorry, the name
of the blog.
Urban File. No, because everybody know Claudio Nelli, everybody know Urban File, so I suppose everybody know in the world Urban File and Claudio Nelli. Now the website is a Urban File, but maybe Claudio, sometime you have to show us some image so also our guests can understand which kind of communication, no? Because it's very interesting what Claudio and his friend is doing, because they are trying to communicate architecture to normal people. And this is not so simple. No? Try to involve people in architectural and urban debates in town. And this is not so simple. No?
Especially because we are not architects.
This can help you. Okay, so James, Michael, what I forget? I can. No, James, you have to switch on your mic.
I missed the first 5 minutes, so I don't know. Did you already introduce Matteo? Matteo?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I missed that. I was working technical problems.
Okay. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I hear you. Yeah.
Good.
So today we are in Mantova, and I would like to leave to Matteo the host, so he can guide our program, our guests, and talking about the relationship. Matteo started with between Mantua and Shanghai, because Matteo wrote an important book. I already sent you some image, James and Mike, an important book about Shanghai architectural history. So maybe Matteo is the best person to introduce our guests and talking better than me in this episode. Please.
Thank you. It's a big responsibility. All the guests, no, only the ones that I can say something, probably.
Yeah, as you prefer.
I try to make, even if I didn't prepare it, I will try to make an organic introduction, trying to mention all the people that are in this meeting. First of all, thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here for talking with you and saying a couple of words about Mantova, about Mantova Architettura, about the works and the researches we are doing in Mantova. I'm sorry I don't have a background of a building of Mantova, but I have all the books that we are doing in Mantova, the researches about the relationship between architecture and history, and the concentrated guide by Luigi Spinelli and Marco Introigni about the history of the city. So it is in a compact version, but Mantova is behind me, and also Shanghai, the book. But I don't have the background, a beautiful background as the one that you have. That was a very good introduction for talking about Mantova, a city of courtyards, a city of natural and urban landscape. A couple of years ago, we made just a design studio in an area that was near the Cavallerizza, that is Piazza Virgiliana, and we started approaching this relationship with the city, that is a city where you have these marvelous open spaces surrounded by history, as the one where Luisa Ferro made her project, that is a very important open space of the city, but surrounded by history. It is not a casual space. It is a space that is very important. And also where Yu Yang made some of his projects in Shanghai, working a lot in the relationship between architecture and history. And this is the reason why also we asked him to come in Mantova 2 years ago for explaining his work and his conception about the relationship between architecture and the city. Also, I don't think that you see very well the books that are behind Yu Yang, but I was there and I saw every cover of those books, and Yu Yang is very interested in Italian architecture. And so you don't see the covers of the books, but there are books also about Italian architects, about
Palladio.
Yes, Palladio, but also
Terrani.
now I am 200 meters from, I live, now I am at home and I am 200 meters from Casa del Fascio in Como.
Yes.
And I was very surprised to find books about Terragni in the office by Yu Yang, and I hope later he will talk about this relationship. However, yes, just for making a little introduction, but my presence here is also for talking about what's happening today in Mantova, besides all the activities that are, however, going on, the design studios, the intensive workshops, and Mantova Architettura. That is a very important event that our school organizes. This one is the 7th year of Mantova Architettura, and it is the first year that Mantova Architettura goes online because of this emergency, the social distancing, and all the consequences that are the side effects that were given by the virus. The 7th year, the first online, and this was also, I can say, a sort of opportunity, because we have always to see also the little positive consequences in a sea of negative consequences. And the positive one for Mantova Architettura is that this is the year where we put order in our archive, because all the conferences were recorded in the last 6 years, but never presented to the public. And this is the year where the conferences that were made in the previous years were uploaded on a server, in order that everybody, also from China, also from Australia, also from the United States, can join them. This year I prepared a new introduction to we are talking also about Australia. I prepared an introduction to the conference about Sean Gotzel, that is one of the best Australian architects, a conference that we did in the marvelous frame of the Temple of San Sebastiano. Mantova Architettura is a series of events where we have very important architects from all over the world, Sean Gotzel, Liu Yang, but organized in marvelous frames, the buildings, the historical buildings of the city. So Yu Yang was in Casa del Mantegna, Sean Gotzel was in the building on the other side of the road, that is the Temple of San Sebastiano. But we have many, many places in the city So it is not closed in the school, but an event that collaborates with the city, and this is very, very important. However, Sean Godzel, who explained his work, now the conference is uploaded on YouTube, on the server of the website of the school. We prepared new introductions, and so this year is a mix between conferences that were uploaded and conferences instead that were new, organized in a streaming like this one, but it was an occasion just for putting order in our archive. In the years, we have the many important authors that came also from Italy, but from all over the world. Last year, I had the opportunity of meeting Kengo Kuma, for example, who is making also many projects in Shanghai, and making with him an interview. He made a conference in the theater, in the Teatro del Bibbiena, that is probably one of the best places in Italy for holding a conference. Andrew Berman, Mario Botta, we had many important architects in the last years. And we started from a few years involving the architects, not only to make a conference, but also to collaborate with the design studios. So the authors come, explain their work, but then the days after, they make reviews with the students in the design studios. And so it is a very interactive relationship that they build with the school. About Shanghai, instead, moving to Shanghai, we have one of the, I'm not a biographer of Yu Yang, but I can say that he's one of the best architects of Shanghai. I met him the first time on a magazine, because Federico Bucci wrote about him in Casabella a few years ago, a project that is very, very interesting, that is the one of the pedestrian kiosks in Nanjing Road, where I understood that Shanghai, that is the history, the city of the bigness, Lujiazui, the business district, where a place where 25 years ago you had rice fields, today is one of the most important and the densest business districts in the world. Instead, he worked on very little kiosks in a public space, Nanjing Road. This is another one, actually. Not the, I don't think that we have the image about that, but on Casabella is published. And instead, the one that you are showing is the one that we published 1 year ago. We made a section of Casabella about the Shanghai architects, organized by Federico Bucci. And there I wrote about two public spaces. One, they are the two opposites in the Huangpu River, one by Original Design Studio, and on the opposite side, the one by Yu Yang. That is a very interesting project. Probably he will talk about this. A requalification of an open space that is near a former industry, where also the memory of the industry becomes important for it becomes an imaginary for the inspiration for making some elements of the urban furniture. And Yu Yang has a very beautiful office in a low density area of Shanghai that I really liked and I visited, full of models, full of projects, full of books. When I saw the one about Terragni, I was very surprised, as I told you. And when he came in Mantova 2 years ago, we went together in Como for visiting the city, for visiting Terragni when the Terragni's buildings were still open. Today you can't visit not only for the virus, but because some of them are interested by interventions of requalification. The Sant'Elia kindergarten, for example, is closed, and there is now a debate because they are making choices that are not appreciated by all the architects here. But however, it is closed, so you can't visit. And Yu Yang was also one of the, and I close and I finish, one of the protagonists of the book that we published in Mantua. I sent the cover, Architecture in Shanghai is the title, and it is a book about Shanghai, about the relationship between architecture and history in Shanghai. There are parts regarding the history of the city, the band, for example, that was curated by Chiara Baglione, that is one of the historians of the Mantua site, and the other professor of my design studio. The history of the city, also Federico Bucci wrote about the history, the most recent, the recent history of the city from Expo to nowadays. I wrote about the history of the Lilong housing. That is a very interesting topic because the city is a city that is growing up a lot, but its identity is made by the Lilong housing. That is a system of residential buildings that was developed since 1870 to 1940, divided in 5 typologies that now is threatened by the development of the city. Many Lilong quarters are demolished, and so there is a problem regarding the history of the city, its identity. And so we made a research about them, trying to understand what we can do today for those quarters. Because you have always the two opposites. You can't demolish because you lose the identity, but you can't probably preserve them as they are, because in terms of comfort, of services, probably something more can be made. And so we made 2 theses in Mantova about that, and they are published in the book, where we try to understand, respecting history, what we can do for updating, for increasing the level of comfort, of attractivity of these spaces. And then there are other essays, besides mine, Chiara Baglione, Federico Bucci. There is one by Luigi Spinelli about the work of Yu Yang, about many projects of his, starting from the open spaces on the Huangpu River and the pedestrian kiosks also, but many others. Then we have Tony Giannone about Atelier des Haus, and Ming Zhang that talks about his work on the public spaces. It is the synthesis of the researches that we did in these years about Shanghai. We organized a workshop that involves the Tongji University, where I am visiting professor, the University of Adelaide. It is a triangular workshop. 1 year we are in Mantova, 1 year we are in Shanghai, 1 year we are in Adelaide. This is the reason why I met Sean Gotzel also. So there is a connection of between all the things I am saying. Australia, China, Italy are connected for me through this workshop, and it was a very good occasion of deepening very different interpretation of the relationship between architecture and history, that is the column that sustain the School of Architecture in Mantova. Here you see the program, yes, of Mantova Architettura 2020.
Just a question, Matteo.
Yeah.
At first, I would like to send my regards to Federico Bucci. How much international Federico's approach was useful to define all this kind of relationship now? Because in Italy is, as you know, is not so simple to talk in English, to develop international relationship, because we have a lot of things in Italy. We have everything now. We have pizza, vino, Firenze, Venezia, Como Lake. We have everything. But the international relationship are very important, no? And this calendar, this program is showing us all this importance, no?
Yes, yes, yes. It is a series of relationships that were developed through the years, certainly. Federico is the leader of this organization, and he met all the people that are involved here through the school, because many workshops and many international relationships are developed through the school. So he travels a lot, I can say. But also some of them through the activity of research that he does also through the magazine. However, what we try to do in these meetings is that the people come and should feel at home. I hope it was...
When Mantova Architettura started for the first time?
7 years ago.
Oh, yeah, 7 years ago. And this year, which kind of issues you have to solve cause Corona? This year is online.
Yes, yes, yes. It is in part half online and half with new meetings. Online, it was the occasion for putting order in our archive. And so some events were recorded in the previous editions, and we professors prepared new introductions for the events. For example, mine about Sean Gossel is a new introduction for an event that was recorded. Also the one by Angelo Lorenzi.
Yeah. Because Angelo Lorenzi, that with Michael we met almost 2 years ago, and we have a thank you. Bye-bye, Angelo, my regards. Because with Angelo we had a nice trip in Mantova, having a special guide as Angelo. Anyway, we met Mr. Yu Yang last year in Mantova, as James remembers, in one of the most incredible, maybe the most iconic courtyard in Mantova, no? The circular courtyard in the Casal Mantegna. I remember Mr. Yu Yang was with his lovely son. And I would like to hear directly from his voice what's about this present and how his life is currently in Shanghai.
Okay. Well, thank everyone for the occasion. I was really touched when Matteo was giving this long introduction about me. So I wasn't expecting that at all. I thought we just come and share a picture or two and say how we're doing each other, you know, wishing each other well. But I'm very touched, and thank you again, Matteo. I think you know, actually I need to clarify, correct your date, because I was actually in Mantua last year. So it was just 1 year ago.
2019.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know, the virus probably made the confusion about time. I don't know if it is summer or winter now. Most of the years.
Exactly.
Yes, sure.
I think in a way, exactly. In a way, everything before the coronavirus seems so long ago, right? It's like a big blur now. And everything that we know now is not the same anymore, you know. So we're in a completely new era, so to speak. So, but anyway, I think today's conversation, you know, brings back a whole a bunch of memory, very beautiful memory, and seeing the images on everyone's background. Because I wasn't prepared to dig out the Mantua images, so I couldn't share with you right now online. But it remains in my head, and it's so very nice. But also the room that I'm in, as I said, there was the actually first time I met Mattel in Shanghai when Mattel and Professor Bucci came to visit me. That was 2 years ago.
Yes.
So we were sitting in this room, and of course, I met Professor Bucci more than 10 years ago, actually. That's when he visited Shanghai, and he wrote me an email out of blue because I didn't know him before, and obviously he wouldn't have known me, and because I wasn't famous or anything, I'm sure. That it's not from magazine or anything that he found me, but somehow I think he made a few contacts with the local Chinese young architects or young practices, and I welcomed him to my studio. It was an older place, not too far from where we work now. But it was a beautiful garden, very big, about 300 square meter of pure green space. But although the studio is only about 100 square meters, so small studio space, big garden. He came in with his wife, and we had a lovely chat, and we had lunch. And after that, I didn't hear from him. And I thought, well, it's kind of strange. So you have this man claim that he's a professor and came and talked, and we had lunch, and then nothing. So I was like, well, who knows? And okay, then later on, I received a magazine. That's what the first publication about the kiosk. So I was really, again, really, really touched. And I think that's somehow the friendship evolved. And we didn't keep in touch for years after that because I'm sure he was busy, but I also been quite busy with building up the practice. So again, 10 years later, suddenly I got another email. Then this time again from Professor Bucci, and then with introducing Matteo. So we reconnected 2 years ago, and last year in Mantua. So that's been quite an amazing experience. So I suppose I should, and also it was during this COVID-19 period that I received the book from Mattel, so sent from Italy, right? So because we had exchanged a few emails during the pandemic, and just greeting each other, asking if you might want to get some mask or something. But luckily everybody's safe, and so anyway, then I was very impressed, to say the least, to see the book finally published and arrived in Shanghai. So it's sitting in my other room. So that was really quite something, I think. And to your perspective into Shanghai, I think it's very different. Although we see Shanghai as a historical city, but I think more so as a booming metropolis. Much of the building construction going on are these large skyscrapers and huge residential developments. But somehow history is seen more as something frozen in time, preserved. I mean, obviously for good reason. So all the buildings in the front or in the former French concession area, these are all historically protected buildings. But what's in between? Is there something between the new construction and the preservation? And that's, I think, something that I, as an architect, and I think a group of younger and not so young architects are increasingly more aware of, more sort of approaching it from a design point of view, that we can, I mean, in fact, learning from Italy, of all places. I think Italy has a lot of good examples, but also many other parts of the world, and of course also drawing experience from China itself, because China has for years and years been working, been sort of treating historical buildings not the way the West had looked at, right? So the West always somehow it could avoid the buildings built, stone and bricks. The preservation part maybe is more of the primary concern, and the adaptive reuse or reconstruction seems more of a secondary. But in China, somehow it's the opposite. So easily you can rebuild a farm building or historical wood buildings just because they are the nature of those materials and constructions need to be continuously rebuilt and replaced. So I think that mentality, it's also important to be aware of. And I think in this day and age, is not to choose side, either to demolish or build or totally preserve. I think it's to look at the circumstance. And I think this kind of in between or middle ground is, I think it's our ongoing interest of working in some of these historical areas in Shanghai. And I think, of course, what's more in recent years are these kind of industrial, the history of industrial buildings. And I think that defines a number of our works or our approach to projects. So if, should I just go ahead and start share the images? Is that the routine? Yeah, okay. So let me try, let's see. Let me see, how should I do this? Okay. Now, before I share the work, actually, I picked out a few images. I don't know if it's okay to share more than one. Can I share a couple? I saw earlier, Giuseppe, you showed a few images, right? So if it's possible, I may not talk a lot about each, but I'll just quickly go through because that kind of represents my train of thoughts as
I totally agree. I'm glad to have you and your emails.
Okay, because one is
Thank you.
really hard. I have to say a lot about one, right? So that's more challenging.
This is your
okay.
home.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with this one because you mentioned about seeing my son at Mantua, and then so here I was also start with also my son. Do you see it?
Oh.
Okay. So this is my youngest. His name is Jacob. He's 5. And this image was taken in February of this year, actually in Hong Kong. And why I started with this was precisely because that's a time when the COVID-19 began to become a major problem, right? First in China, end of January, and then by February time, I think many Asian countries and cities started to close borders, and Europe was also reacting, US was reacting, but we were kind of caught in this middle of the chaos without, of course, nobody had any prediction. So we had a 10-day holiday trip to Hong Kong, as we always do for the Chinese New Year. We always fly back. Because my wife's family's from there, and but somehow when you arrive 1 week later, you realize you're not gonna get out for indefinite period of time. We had no idea because the border was closed and the things seemed to be pretty bad looking in China. So we were not in a position to say to come back to Shanghai, and so we were stuck in Hong Kong, and this went on for us for about actually almost 8 weeks. Before situation in Shanghai or in China had calmed down, then we finally came back to Shanghai in middle of March. Okay, so this is 1 month before we came back. And so Hong Kong, although it had a border closure, but it did not formally implement a lockdown. But still, because I was staying in one of my friends' flat, he happened to be back in the US, and so he has an empty flat, enough rooms for all of us, for my family. So we ended up staying with him instead of staying in a hotel, or staying in his empty flat. But because the neighbors are, of course, local Hong Kongese, and they know we're from, we travel from China, and so we were kind of imposing self-quarantine or self-restriction of not going out too much, right? Not trying to scare our neighbor. It's just like Giuseppe was saying earlier that, if you're from Milano, the rest of Italy don't welcome you to go and visit, right, in their beach. So it's the same mentality, we impose a kind of self restriction about our movement. So try not to get out. But kids, they after a few days, I mean, they really go crazy. I mean, we go crazy. So we start to find this one park next to the flat, and we would take a daily walk to that park. And avoiding, of course, crowded area, but just kind of finding this kind of tree area. And this particular late afternoon, the boys were kind of making things out of the tree branches on the ground. And maybe half an hour into it, they started make what is like the beginning of a hut, right? Of a small space, right? Small enough that the youngest boy could kind of go and kind of settle in there. So I thought it was a very beautiful moment that of course kids, they don't think about this. I mean, they know this is happening, but they find their relief in creating something. I think it's the act of making and creating, and then what you create is really a space, as primitive as it is. I find that very, very beautiful. So I always kept this image in my cell phone, and that's what I want to share with you. So it's a reflection of, it's a moment of this kind of dramatic period. And of course, eventually we left. Flew back to Shanghai when everything is more calmed down. Then I'll move to the second image, which is, let's see. Let me see. Okay, so so this will be my second image. Okay, do you see?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, okay. This was taken at about a week after I came back to Shanghai. It's one of our recent images. So I say recent because it was finished. It was finished end of last year, just before like around November or so. And there was so anyway, this place is next to the waterfront. Again, it was opposite of our previous project with the East Bund. This is on the west side, but sort of northwest, in a more kind of approaching the more rural part. But it's still in sort of the extension of the city. It's a district called Yangpu. And we were part of a 5-kilometer stretch of waterfront land, but formerly very heavy industries all along this area. But the whole area had been redesignated as a leisure parks. Not much building were left, but this happened to be one of the buildings that we actually recommended. When we entered into this project. Most of the building on site, which were industrial, and some even were polluted, but others were just kind of useless. Not useless, but buildings no longer used for any function. So we actually recommended a number of buildings to be kept, some to be reprogrammed, but in this particular case, we just say, okay, there was a warehouse, and let's make it into a pavilion of just the walls. That we just kept the walls, we took out the roof, and we reinforced it with steel reinforcement as really a pavilion in the landscape, but it's an industrial pavilion. And so what you see in this image was you see this horizontal steel reinforcement over the original bricks, because even though there were warehouses that had, this was a warehouse that had been built since the 60s, so it's been standing for like 50, 60 years, and it was okay condition. It wasn't, obviously it was old, but it wasn't any like a sign of collapsing or anything. So we said, okay, we keep it, but of course for public safety, once you open to the public as a space, you need to make sure the structure and everything is sound. So we created these horizontal, almost like bracing, just to on both sides of the wall, we brace them. And so the bricks will be kept for sure, be safe. And then what's interesting is you see these sort of paintings or drawings on the wall on the one side. Those are actually made of Lego. They're made of Lego toys. And this actually was left from November of last year, because after this project opened, the client, which is the district government of Yangpu, had made series of events, public events, and including a Lego building or Lego drawing festival. So
this is the Claudio Nelli Award.
Pardon
This is
me?
the Claudio Nelli. This is the Claudio Nelli Award, because Claudio is a really Lego passionate.
Okay, yeah, we should invite him to build this again. So this was interesting. It was just left. The kids and the family made this, and they kind of put them onto the wall. So the frame that we made was actually just perfect. It wasn't when I made this, steel frame reinforcement, it wasn't thought of to accommodate the Lego paintings, but then it just seems a perfect fit. And also, of course, it was a sunny day, it was breezy, not a lot of public on the street yet because March, people are still very cautious. So not a lot of people coming out, but it seems like the beginning of the spring coming out. So, and that's why, so if I show you another image, you can see the flowers coming out, and that's the other side of the building from looking from the outside. So you can see the yellow part was the original wall, and outside it was paved, or it was covered with mortar, so you don't see the brick. The inside, the bricks are exposed. But in anyhow, the building becomes the inside and outside becomes one. So it's no longer in the building or out of the building. You're just two different sides of the wall, so to speak. And so that becomes quite a interesting space that, very interesting space that we were able to keep. And if I may, I'll show you the last image, which is this. So, so this was about, let me see, is it showing the Lu Jiazui, looking from the Minshen Wolf? So that's the project that was, that Mattel had mentioned, and I gave a talk about it last year. And this image was actually taken by a friend who just happened to be running through it one afternoon, beautiful sunset. And so he just took a photo and posted it in his moments. And then I saw it and I said, hey, you're in my project. So, so it's kind of this, again, a kind of building or project afterlife, because after you design it, you don't really, go back to it, like, as you were designing or doing the construction, you would visit almost daily. But afterward, it takes on its own life. And you start to, the beautiful thing about this image is of course, it's so quintessential Shanghai. With the towers and so on, but with the industrial heritage in the foreground, and the Mattel mentioned about our design, or the kiosks and everything, is attention to the smallness, attention to the kind of human detail. I think again, this vantage point from my friend's photograph, it again shows that the human relation to things such as the handle, for example, or the lights, or the thing we kept, the big crane that was kept on site, and then of course the distant high rises, the waterfront, everything sort of come together. Even though you could say 2 years ago this kind of space wasn't available. So it was really in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 years that we began to see with the works of various architects, including Mattel had mentioned Professor Zhang Min of Original Studio, and many other architects kind of working along as a collective, I think. So I reposted this image and I gave a title called Architecture as Collective. So I think ultimately that's what we see, that our individual roles and our individual design contributes to the bigger collective. And so I'll leave at that. I hope it's not too serious or academic. But anyhow, I think these are the beautiful images I happen to have in recent days that I think speaks to the topic. And what now, just to give you a more recent update of what's happening in Shanghai, is just from a working city life point of view. Pretty much all the offices are back to normal, in a way that people, of course, are being cautious, and more Zoom meetings than ever before. I think Chinese clients or projects are not used to doing this kind of Zoom meetings, right? But now I would say 90% of our meetings are done online, which I think has an additional benefit, or it's a surprising benefit, because I travel less. I don't, so it's more environmental, right? You take less flights and more efficient. I can do 3 presentations in a day, as opposed before you do 1 presentation, but you have to fly 3 days, back and forth. So it's much more efficient. which I like. I like.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I totally agree.
School is about to go
It
back.
will be very difficult to come back to reality.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's my sharing. I hope that's good enough for you.
Thank you, Leo. It was a very. Maybe somebody of you have some question. Emily, what do you think about this episode?
You're putting her on the spot. Hi, Emily. I think we have each other's WeChat, right, from last year. Yeah. So, I didn't know you're in Valto University now. You're in Finland now.
Yes, I applied the master degree in Finland.
Okay. Well, wonderful place. Because after Mantua last year, I spent 1 week in Finland and visiting the Aalto University. So, and of course, and many of his buildings. So, I really love the city.
Yeah. I was thinking, like, there's my parents live very close to the Yangpu waterfront area. It's next to Liu project, and they always go to have a walk after dinner, talking about some interesting things happened there when they go to working, like some chat with neighbors, and they will take care about the cars there, and the plants there is growing something like these small stories in life, and this makes the project is really big by the neighbors, and there's some. I mean, we didn't have any relation with professional architectures, but the kind of like the feedback from the life. That's the interesting point that I get from the project. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's very true. I think that's I mean, in the last few years, we were lucky enough to be involved in 2 very public projects. In the sense that projects that the spaces, you don't have walls or fences, because sometimes you design the buildings or campuses like schools or office campus. I mean, people are it's not accessible to the outside people, right? So with these 2 waterfront projects, you feel like you're really helping or contributing to the cities, and I think that's where the role or the identity of architecture really can fade into the background and just let the place, and especially in Yangpu, let the landscape take the foreground and be enjoyed by the public. And I think another thing about Yangpu, which you mentioned, like the neighborhood come in, in the evening, have a stroll, is really the landscape itself. And that's when we were involved in the early planning, we really insisted that most of the trees, as long as it's not like blocking like the roads and stuff, or even there are a few cases where it was blocking the original planning of the road, we actually work with the government to kind of change the road a little bit, so that the trees, because those trees have been there for the 50, 60, 70 years, and they were really precious, because this is really the kind of a back garden of Shanghai, because Matteo probably would know, from Tongji University, it's about 20 minutes, right? You drive to the waterfront, about 10 or 20 minutes, you get to this place, so quite close to the center of the city, but yet it's so different. It's so much like going back to the history, and again, the history of it's actually quite significant for Chinese modernization, because this whole area was the first industrial places, in a sense that first, I would say, Chinese industrial buildings, because you had because in Shanghai in the late 19th century and early 20th century, you have many people from many countries. You have the Germans, the French, the Americans, But also Chinese were trying to be more entrepreneurial and more to become more industrialist. And this part was the first part. So it's not it's not what you're showing on the website. That's the west part. That's the east part. So we're talking about the more recent one in Yangpu, which is much more the Chinese industry in the early 20th century. So these were Chinese entrepreneurs building up the first power plants, first water filtration plant, and so on. So it has a lot of industrial heritage. That's, of course, my two images didn't do justice to the whole background. But if there's another occasion, I'd love to share that project in its completion. So, and then again, also that's done by a group of like almost 8 different firms together with the government, with the planner. So we were one of the 8, but what I show you is the particular moment of our intervention that I felt was nice to share in this particular occasion. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I would like to leave Luisa introduce some image she want to share with us. But before this, I just was I have just hit by this image where this girl is as her foot on her feet on this bench without shoes, and this is this is imagine, no, this is respect for the public bench as your private sofa, no. And
You know, I never noticed that until you mention it. But now that you mention it, I was talked about that in my next lecture. I'll use that for my next lecture to say.
No, because one of my masters, Rosaldo Bonicalzi, always was saying me the best architecture is make people give them respect. No. So when people feel to have to respect something, because this something is really in this something found a feeling with people, no? So people feel at home. And so now I would like to have Luisa to talk about this the images she would like to share with us, and I don't tell nothing about Piazza Sordello, but I hope she share with us some images about Piazza Sordello. At the meantime, we could have a chat with my friends. James, how is going there?
I'm good. I like to say a few things about Liu Yuyang's project, the last one, and then I have to run to another meeting, which I'm late for. So, excuse me. I was born in Shanghai, and I left when I was 12 to the States. And one of my best memory is the waterfront, and the waterfront is a very different waterfront, say Paris, or it's the memory of the waterfront when I was a kid was the working ships that was very low to the water, that's carrying coal, carrying sand. They had kind of like dark ghosts going around, and also the smell of diesel on the ports on the waterfronts. So it's a very rough kind of a waterfront, but at the same time, coming from the cities, Shanghai is very compacted with the hutongs and everything. All of a sudden, you open up with this waterfront, right? It's almost like a giant plaza. You have the wind, you have the smell of the diesel, you have these industrial things, and the low humming of these boats, like dark ghosts. So, in a way, my memory of Shanghai's open space and public space, the best open part of the space, is inseparable from the memory of these industrial qualities, even the smell and the texture. So I'm very happy to see in that project, these things were kept in parts of it. You know, you still have the feeling that this was once a kind of a rough and hard industrial place. You can still feel the machineries and the weight of the machines, and so, and then at the same time now it's a more accessible public space. So I think that's a very difficult thing to do. I don't know if it's intentional. You must be somewhat intentional, but something very difficult to capture and something very difficult to keep or to bring out in the project, especially when it's over that distance and so many participants. So I loved it. So congratulations. I seen it's made me think about my childhood, you know, in the
Thank you, James.
late 70s.
Next time you're in Shanghai, I'll give you a personal tour.
Yeah, okay. So I gotta run off, but anyways.
Okay.
See you guys.
See you.
Luisa, I have to run off to another meeting.
Okay, Luisa.
You see my pictures or not?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
It's a nice picture.
I have to go away from the meeting, then I have to, okay. Pagina schermo intero. Oh, sorry. I am a little bit, so Beppe gave me this picture, and I think it is a picture of last year. I don't know, but I know you visited my domus, and I had the honor to work in Mantua and to work this project. And I only want to show you some pictures and to say something about this project, because it is a room. It is only a little room which is, this is Mantua. Just to remember that Mantua is on a river, but it is a particular part of the Mincio River, which is a lake. So just to remember what Beppe told to the beginning, that about water, Mantova and water. But just to come back to my little room, to the Domus of Piazza Sordello, it doesn't want to be alone, but it wants to be a little part of a very big and important itinerary route, which was the route of Renaissance in Mantova, the route of the Duke and the Duchess. They show themselves to people when they walk in this itinerary, and they walk through their architectures, their important architecture of Renaissance. So this is a little room inside a big itinerary. Matteo told about Marco Introini photos, so this is the walk through this itinerary, starting from Palazzo Te and going inside Mantua landscape. This is Sant'Andrea, but you have been there. I only want to understand that this little room is inside a very important architecture. It is a little room inside of this. During the Renaissance, there had been the myth of ancient, but nothing of ancient Mantua was visible. So ancient Mantova was disappeared. So Gonzaga tried to buy pieces of ancient from Venice, from Greece, from Roman places, but they didn't have nothing about Roman Mantua. So this little room, now those are Introini, Marco Introini photos about Mantova. And so they bought all pieces of ancient coming from Greece and Roman, but they didn't have nothing about Mantua ancient pieces. So this little room in Piazza Sordello is very precious, because it is the only piece of ancient Mantua which came to light nowadays. So it's just a little room that remember the myth of ancient that Mantova had, the ducates that had in the history. So this is a room, the most important room in Mantova, probably in the history of architecture. And just to remember you that my domus is a little room among all these big architectures. Now we are in Piazza Sordello, and you remember that there is St. Peter Church. St. Peter Church stands on a very Roman important part of Mantova, and also the Palazzo Ducale stands on Roman Mantua. And this is the little piece of ancient Mantua which came to light and that you saw in my little room. There are two mosaics, and they are the only Roman pieces original from Mantova. So these are the mosaics. Here you are, the Roman Mantova probably was this little part. This is the top of the city, and had very important walls which are in red, and Piazza Sordello is inside this 45, the Roman town. And that's about the myth of the ancient. Also Mantegna, the painter Mantegna, had the myth of ancient Mantova. He always we can find all these pictures of ancient Mantova. He always thought about it, but they didn't have anything about the ancient town. So it came out to light nowadays. And so I wanted just to underline how is important this little room in this big urban landscape. I don't know if someone told you that the municipality of Mantova decided to build only half of the project. The project was bigger and wanted to close the square, and this is a very unsolved part of the square, but they decided only to build half of this. There had been very during the building of this.
So nice drawings. So
yes,
nice drawings.
Yes, those are drawings.
Is it permanent? Is it?
Whole project, and you visit also half of this project because it was built on only a part. This was the evocation of ancient domus, and probably these walls follow just like fragments the domus, which stands is hidden in the square.
Is it a permanent?
Bigger than this is the part of the project which has been realized and that you visit.
Very, very beautiful, awesome drawing.
My sons and my daughter are telling that I'm speaking English like a Spanish cow, and I know it, so I have to say sorry for my English.
No, your English is...
drawings you visit. This is the only part of Roman ancient Mantua. And
is it permanent, isn't it?
Yes, it is permanent. Yes, it is permanent and is always open. Is not a museum, so you don't have to pay a ticket. If you walk along this historic street of Mantova, you can arrive there and visit the archaeological sites, and then you can go on and go to the. This is the drawing of this little room. Those are drawings of the project.
Really, actually beautiful drawings. Actually beautiful drawings. I'm talking about the drawings because, as Luisa knows, I taught drawings and representation of architecture for 15 years in the Faculty of Civil Architecture in Milano, and I come from that generation that in Italy was my master was famous for a generation called from draw architecture. I mean paper. Somebody told the paper architecture, no, because it was architecture just on the paper. But the power of the drawings is stunning, you know. And just a few days ago, we was talking with Claudio. I can launch this small spoiler. We was talking with Claudio about this issue because, as Mr. Yu Yang told us before, his work in Shanghai is in progress, is growing up. Is in Italy we have a different kind of project, and as Luisa shown, the project maybe is able to the project often we work on try to involve the all areas, try to work on an area we have in our mind as the area useful to define the project, no? And drawing helps us to understand how big the project should be, no? So is not the developer to tell us how big or tall or large, but the architecture and the architectural drawings. So drawings becomes really important to understand the town, to understand the place, to explain us, like a novel is able to explain us the characters, the drawings are able to explain us the urban characters. And with Claudio was talking some days ago about these issues is because in Milano we have, Milano is changing. Milano after Expo is becoming more open, more chosen. And we have a lot of urban space that are waiting for a new, for some new design. And it could be interesting to get drawings like this one, even if at the end the municipality could decide, as in Piazza Sordello, they could decide to build just a small piece, because the drawings are able to create debates. The drawings can be shown like in this video call, and using the drawings, really we could understand the aim, the soul of the town.
This project created great debates, and some people wanted to destroy it because they thought that this project was against Piazza Sordello, but it's still here, it's still there. And I'm very proud of this. Oh, some drawings, in the low part, you can find some building project drawings, and all stones are put on the other in dry way. Then there is no cement, and they are brought together with a little I don't know how to say steel tie rod. Cos'è catena? They are brought together just with a little, but they are in dry, built dry.
Yeah.
Here you are, the little domus you can see. And
Luisa, I visited your rooms. In fact, that's me in the photograph that you showed before, the fool in the front. But actually, I really like them, and I like that feeling. It's like you're in a tomb or catacomb, you know, kind of looking at the history. It's very, you know, it feels like a secret there.
Yes, real. Thank you.
And actually, I don't think it impacts on the piazza too much. Kind of from memory, is kind of sort of on an edge. You know, it's almost on the frame rather than
yes, it is.
too central.
Yes, it is.
I said
that's my memory. I remember it left quite a big impression.
Yeah. I said about drawings, but I didn't say how much drawings my friend Michael is able to develop in 1 hour. I had lucky to cooperate with him, and I work on the same desk with him. And Michael is incredible because Michael sketch a lot and is really able to use drawing to understand what we are doing. And so really I hope we could continue in this kind of relationship. So if you wanted to leave your contact on the chat of this on this video call, I would like to continue this cooperation because, for example, with Claudio, we have some other project about drawing, about public space. So I would like to involve you in some of these new, maybe next year, about these new events.
Indeed.
But I don't want to spoil nothing.
Just look at the photo in the lower part with the three professors joking with me. They always take photos in front of the domus, and Federico Bucci, Gigi Spinelli, they are and a very important historian of Mantua who is they are joking with me and then they send me all photos
guarda
on top
c'è
of the domus.
lunga,
Sorry?
c'è il camioncino.
Non ho capito.
Anyway, in this episode, I have a special guest, Mr. Liu Yang from Shanghai. We have Emily from Alvar Aalto University, but is a Chinese girl. Also, Michael, and Michael know very well Chinese culture. So please, you should have. Now I have to switch off my background because, or I can. Which is the correct Chinese flag? This one or this one?
No,
because
the other one.
I have two flags and I don't know which is the correct one. Why? I bought last time in Shanghai, but which is the correct one, Emily?
Well, I think one is the national flag. The other one is the party flag.
So this is the national and this is the Communist Party.
Yes.
Oh, perfect.
And they two always go together. The two always go together.
Because on my desk I have a lot of things I bought everywhere for this. So meanwhile I was working. I can remember my best. Let me see. I love it. So
everything is political, right?
I would say thank you. Actually, thank you for your special image, for your participation. So this episode was amazing, and I really hope to meet you in person as soon as possible. Maybe in China, maybe in Italy. I hope we start again to travel. And if you want to leave your contact in the chat, we'll keep in touch. Okay, Mr. Yang, Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to say to Luisa, I love your project. Beautiful archaeological site. I mean, it's so poetic from looking at your images, your drawings. I just wonder why Matteo didn't take me there last year. I spent 5 days in Mantua, but nobody took me there.
The time available was very, very short.
So I missed it. So I must come back.
There are too much things to see, and the Domus is the last one.
I was like, I missed that part.
So you have to come back.
I have
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Pepe, can I send 3 telegraphs? Very short telegraphs.
Yeah, you can do everything. So you are the honor.
One to Luisa, because I haven't seen before the drawings about the Domus.
Really?
Really, I saw probably when you came for one of our top workshops, but probably not the ones of the Domus, and they are very, very beautiful. So many congratulations for that.
Thank you.
I told Pepe that we just won the competition for the square of Lissone in front of Casa del Fascio.
Bravo!
Where we were asked to be very realistic, hyper realistic, and instead your drawings that are very artistic gave me a sense of satisfaction. So many congratulations. This is the first. To Yu Yang, he knows how much I appreciate his work. The pictures he showed me let me think about what Professor Jianlong Zhang wrote in the book about the waterfronts in Shanghai that are going from a back to a front now. And the project by Yu Yang is incredibly representative of this passage in Shanghai. The waterfront is a new front for the city. And about Mantua Architettura, I didn't want to forget the opening of this year. And I invite you, besides certainly the lesson about Sean Gotzel, to see also the one by Eduardo Souto de Mura that is very beautiful as the opening of this online edition. And Souto de Mura, that now is one of the professors of Mantova, is, I think, a very interesting way for starting this this series of conferences of Mantova Architettura online. Just these 3 very short telegraphs. And thank you, Pepe, for the invitation, and to all the participants for their considerations, images, and all. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. Thank you to all of you. Applauses to all of you. And we can say bye-bye and see you with the same music we started at the beginning. Hope to really to meet again in person.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Meet you.
Grazie.
Ciao, grazie.
Ciao.
Thank you.